When was the last time you sat down to watch an anime? And by the end of it, it lit this flame in you, this burning desire to challenge something that you have written off as unattainable. Maybe you kept making mistakes and deemed it a waste of time. After all, there are people who could most likely do it better than you. But like a bad itch, this insatiable desire to pick up whatever you have tossed aside becomes increasingly more difficult to ignore. And there was this show that managed to kickstart that desire once more. To reach for the unattainable, well, let me show you Bluelock. Bluelock is a show that has already been written off by most people, mainly because it's a sports anime. A buddy of mine recommended that I give the first episode a chance, and as the first episode was setting up the generic rivalry we will see throughout the entirety of Bluelock, in the final moments of the first episode, everything changed. Our protagonist was forced to play a game where the last one holding onto the ball would be eliminated, forever blacklisting them from ever playing in the Japanese soccer league. Isagi, winded by a powerful shot to the stomach, he began to panic, kicking the ball to whoever was closest to him. Everything that he knew was going to be taken away because he was used as a human shield. With a few seconds left on the clock, the same person that tried to take him out is now on the ground, unable to move due to a minor leg injury, setting up the perfect opportunity to Isagi. He can now save his future and eliminate the person that nearly ended his career. Right as he was about to destroy this man's dreams and kick the ball, he stopped and turned around. Right then and there, he decided he was not going to secure an easy victory by eliminating someone who was weaker than him, but instead, he chose to challenge someone who was far more robust than him, willing to risk everything if it meant growing as a player. But right as he was about to challenge the strongest, another Bluelock participant stole the ball, as we get an animation that I would like to call sitting on the edge of my seat levels of excitement, watching these two football players risking everything that they have, trying not to get eliminated. And in 3 seconds, we watch a person that has been thoroughly built up as a rival and a potential best friend to Isagi immediately get eliminated with a ball to the face by a man driven by sheer resolve and desire to become the strongest one there. Everything perfectly combining to create this level of drama and tension and overall deceptions that I've never seen in a sports anime before. So take a seat, relax, because today we're going to be talking about what makes Bluelock the most important anime that you haven't watched. Sports anime has always been weird, right? Who are the target audience for sports anime? In a medium where we have ninjas that use space magic to summon planet-destroying attacks, where does an anime about mundane people playing with balls fit in? Sports anime, ironically, is not so much about the sports. Kinda, let me explain. When you sit down to watch a sports anime, you're not so much worried about how many points can your favorite team score, but rather the underlying consequences if your favorite character doesn't meet their set expectations, or the expectations by the people around them. And no other anime has made it a focal point better than Bluelock. While you do have characters playing their favorite sports and losing, aside from a few select anime, their losses don't feel as heavy or as impactful as an elimination in Bluelock. I want you to take Haikyuu as an example. Haikyuu is an exemplary sports anime that takes what I consider a mind-numbing sport into one of the most exciting 24 minutes that involves a team of boys slapping a ball around. But a defeat in Haikyuu feels hollow, especially since you know they're most likely just gonna mope around for an episode or two before honing their craft and improving. But watching Bluelock, it treats it completely different. A defeat there means the end of your career. Everything that you've worked hard to achieve and will ever hope to achieve will become meaningless if you end up eliminated from the program. The story begins with our main character Yoichi Isagi, a typical Japanese high schooler playing in their final game before heading out to the finals. As we're brought to the last quarter of the match, we watch our protagonist masterfully dodging and weaving across the field of his fellow football players, managing to make it to the end by himself. And in the split second before he made the shot, when the only thing in his mind was reaching the finals and winning, he heard the voice of his coach reminding him that soccer is an 11-man team sport. And instead of taking the shot, he chooses to believe in his fellow teammate and passes the ball to him. What should have been an exciting moment where our protagonist places his trust in his companion's skills, instead he kicks the ball and fails to secure his team the victory, allowing the opposite team to instead take advantage of his mistake by passing the ball to their team's ace, where he single-handedly managed to take control of the game by repeating the same action our protagonist has done. Except he took it upon himself to take the shot that ultimately claimed victory for his team, grasping the future that he wanted, and eliminating our protagonist and his team from ever reaching the finals. The thing that I love about this scene is that 1. It neatly tells you what to expect from Bluelock, and 2. It perfectly captures the feeling of defeat, especially after getting so close to achieving your dreams. While you're not able to fully register what happened in the moment, the sheer severity of it won't hit you until you have some time to reflect and accept the failures that occurred earlier that day. If only I had taken the shot, maybe things would have turned out different. Which is why on his way home he keeps repeating the same phrase, one for all for one. Typically an inspiring message to say, but instead causing him to have an emotional breakdown. A few days later, he receives a letter from the Japanese Football Union, arriving and letting him know that he was chosen to become a certified athlete. There, our protagonist finds Ryosuke Kira, the same individual that defeated his team a few days earlier, attending the same program. And from here on, the plot starts to kick in. Igo Jinpachi assembled 300 strikers intending to turn one lucky individual into the perfect striker. Also, it's where he gives the best advice any anime character has ever offered. Let me paraphrase it real quick. You can't become the world's best until you stop caring what other people think about you. Short, sweet, and to the point. If you wish to accomplish the goal or dream, you can't be worried what other people may think of you. And that idea is the main focal point of the show, and it is what makes it so interesting. That, and our ability to relate to Yoichi's feeling of anger and frustration. It resonated with me more than I had hoped for. It reminded me of the last time that I was able to play baseball with one of my closest friends. Before we had to inevitably go our separate ways, we made it to the semifinals. After a hot summer of playing baseball, we managed to get there. And the only thing that we needed was to beat the team in front of us that day. But we were denied the opportunity to play. Right before a game, one of our players got sick and couldn't make it. We ended up having to forfeit. Now, that same field that we once called a battleground is nothing more than a desolated patch of grass. And as a reminder for our hard work, we were given this third place trophy that's collecting dust somewhere in my home. And I believe that feeling of inadequacy also rings true for the people watching this show. Since no one is immune from having this type of thought, what if I've done it this way? Maybe it could have turned alright. The inability to make a decision and the impact that carries is something that Kenshiros is an expert at expressing. There are few animes that blatantly tell you that there's competition everywhere, but only the ones with an ego can reach the next stage in their life and eventually reach the top. These words would have rang hollow if it wasn't for the series creator Kenichiro Muneyuki. Now, Kenshiro has to be one of the most secretive authors I had ever come across, where it's to the point that I sometimes wonder if the man even existed. I would have had a better luck finding the freeway phantom before I would get a video interview of the guy. And lucky for me, I was able to run into one of his most recent interviews, talking about Bluelock's popularity, and he mentioned something quite interesting. Neither the author Kenshiro nor his artist Nomura are die-hard football fans. He even says, aside from playing it in elementary school, this is the most he had ever done with the sport. So here's the thing, right? So the name Kenshiro is a name that I recently heard, and I didn't know if he had worked on other mangas because, you know, lately there's been a rise of mangaka who gain popularity because they worked with someone famous before. So the craziest part for me is not that he isn't some hidden prodigy that came out of nowhere with his manga being a crazy success, but way before I started the whole YouTube thing, I read a few of his previous works, one of them being Kamisama Iutoori. And if you don't know, Kamisama Iutoori was the one where high schoolers were forced to participate in a death match in order to become God. And no, not that one. Everything finally started making sense, why Bluelock is so infectious. Coming across more of a dystopian death game than a typical shonen sports anime. I mean, in his interview, he did state that he was inspired mainly by Fukumoto's Kaiji, an excellent gambling anime slash dystopian nightmare that doubles up as a cautionary tale about co-signing loans in your name. So, in order for everything else that I'm about to say make sense, we first have to go on a small journey into the mind of this author. Because I want you to understand how insane this is for me. Why a man who made something like Kamisama Iutoori go into something like this? Okay, back in my days when manga and anime weren't as well regarded as they are now, and there wasn't this tsunami of shit that we call isekai, there was a subgenre of popular battle royale mangas like Alice in Borderland, Kamisama Iutoori, and well, from what I can remember, Kamisama Iutoori was about Shun, our average Japanese high schooler, as he lived a relatively mundane life. That is until one day his teacher's head decided to divorce his body, which started the event I'm going to talk about. We get some gory and clever game designing, where the characters have to make these edge-of-the-moment life-saving decisions, or one of them being where you're forced to wear these rat costumes to score a goal into a basket that's currently being used as a choker for a gargantuan Lucky Cat that poses as a JoJo's character. And if you're not fast enough, he will crush you, and the characters have to figure out how to score a goal and survive or die as a furry. And I don't know about you, but dying in a fursuit has to be one of the most terrifying thing a younger me had ever read. And it makes it some of the most exciting and edge of your seat reading. And all that craziness is spread throughout 5 volumes of his manga. And it's so different compared to his manga about pretty boys kicking a ball that for a split second I almost had to take my glasses off and clean them to make sure I was looking at his body of works. It made me wonder when someone's leg will get blown off in Bluelock. Now, everything that I mentioned was just in the first half of the series. Since I'm a fan of things going crazy, I couldn't be happier when everything that I mentioned went above and beyond with even more crazy scenarios in its sequel series, Kamisama Iutoori 2, Revengeance. We get all the delinquent kids who skipped out on school, getting kidnapped by a robotic version of their school statue, as they are all propelled into a secret location to play another round of the game. Imagine thinking, wow, it's a good thing that I'm a piece of shit and skipped out on school, or else I would have been thrown into a nightmare. But moments before you were about to viciously beat your meat, that thing interrupts you by saying, hey bro, you're coming with us, dead or alive. And it's not like this manga even wastes time trying to explain what the hell's going on. One moment the main character is running away from a caricature of a demon from the 14th century, each coming equipped with special deadly abilities that if one of them touches you, you find yourself getting whisked away to the afterlife. While the psychotic pretty boy who wants to become God is promising the girl that the main character partnered up with just a few moments ago, he could make her come so hard. And that didn't even last long, as he falls in love with the main character. And it becomes this life or death love triangle where our main character is thrown into these increasingly difficult situations as former allies are turned into his enemies. It's a perfect sequel where the author takes everything that he learned from his first series and drastically improves upon it, from the comedy to how clever the games are, making you sit down and analyze the words of this douchey looking guy to figure out what are the requirements to survive and advance onto the next round. How is this not an anime? Instead, we get a second season of a guy who wants to fuck a gorilla, a horse, and a cat. I don't know, sometimes the Japanese could come up with some brilliant, out-of-this-world ideas. And other times we get 100 isekai where the guy's trying to spread the legs of anything that moves. Hell, sometimes they don't even have to do that. While we unfortunately will never get a chance to witness the magnificence that is a 3-headed Santa Claus dropping off a box filled with 3 murderous monkey in any animated form, we would get closer to that in this next series, Jagaaaan. Now, I can't be too sure why this one series blew up here in the West, especially when we already had the prototype version of the Squid Game finished and ready to be animated. But if I have to take an educated guess, it's most likely due to a rise of beloved internet entertainers spreading some good old-fashioned propaganda that we can get behind. Now, I won't lie, before making this video, I had only read like 20 chapters. So as to not come off as someone who's just spewing some random I read all 160 chapters in less than 24 hours to write this damn part. And it was a pleasant surprise from beginning to end. Our protagonist Jagaaaan gets infected with a tadpole, turning his innermost desires into reality. And his innermost desire is to grow a gun for an arm. Okay, so thinking about it, I can see why it became so popular here in the West. Well, when he returns home after blasting one of these fractured humans, his girlfriend becomes one and had to, unfortunately, put her down. Thus created this kind of situation where if the main character wants to see his girlfriend alive, he's going to have to hunt down a varying amount of tadpole people in order to give her a second chance at life. And on brand, this brilliant bastard writes 160 chapters of the most batshit insane storytelling that I had ever come across. One chapter, we're watching him fight a tree person, only for a few chapters later, we watch him give a ride using his hand turned into a jet. To a fan, and the only thing that's going through my mind is, how did we get here? I blinked and my life flashed before me. Despite the craziness that goes on in his series, you can see how Kenshiros had already perfected what makes Bluelock such a captivating series. How he's able to convey the importance of weight behind being selfish and taking actions to stand out, where the choices that you make hold meaning, which is what makes Kenshiros Body feel so special. Hell, he made 74 chapters of high schoolers and Peter Pan over here, committing a terrible mistake where a couple of boys sneak back into their school in the middle of the night and plant fireworks to scare off their bullies, and instead ends up setting a fire so great in their schools that it made the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory look like it was nothing. Who in their right minds even write something like this? Kenshiro, that's who. And that's so unconventional and bizarre that it keeps me coming back to read his works. And all of that is neatly packaged in Bluelock, especially when you take a look at Isagi. Yoichi Isagi is a character that's so enthralling to watch. It isn't because he's a soccer prodigy, but his ability to adapt and overcome whatever situation he's dragged into. Most of the protagonists that we watch are these stereotypical embodiments of resolve with a heart of gold. That's fine to know, I'm not saying while you're playing baseball to run up and hit someone in the leg with a bat. But the thing is that differentiates him from his contemporaries is that he grows and changes into something that's not common in this genre. Going from a typical Japanese stand-in to someone who in the middle of a battlefield could remain cool, calm, and collective. And slowly throughout the series, we watch him become warped and twisted like everybody there. My bad, I misspoke, let me correct myself. What I meant to say is, he becomes more messed up than everybody there. And that's saying a lot, especially when you have someone who's a stark believer of mutually assured destruction. Another that hears a monster inside of him, and the worst of all, Ichigo without his sword. Early on, we get to see that Yoichi is a decent player, but he isn't a one-man army. He's not single-handedly scoring his team 30 points a match. Rather than that, the thing that makes Yoichi such a compelling protagonist would be his incredible spatial awareness, and his ability to analyze and manipulate everyone around him. From his teammates to his enemies, not only to win the game, but to make himself stand out amongst them. Whether it's using another egotistical soccer player that forces his team to play in a way that makes himself shine, or someone who could use the same abilities that Yoichi can. At the end of the day, it's always jumping out of your seats level of excitement. Watching Yoichi piece everything that's going on around him to create a path that allows him to take control of the most unwillable situations. How can you not get excited watching him gather everything that he needs in order to survive? I think the most crucial part of Bluelock and what makes it work is its art style. I don't know about you, but I would prefer watching the 2006 version of Berserk than sitting down and watching any sort of non-contact sport. But the beauty about anime is that it can make any mundane act look and feel incredible. Take the iconic goal that's made by Ichigo in the 3rd episode. What in reality looks like a guy kicking a ball is translated into a man kicking the ball so hard it looks like it's breaking the sound barrier. And how everything is cranked up to 11. As much as I want to give credit to 8-Bit for bringing his works to life, I'll be remiss to say that much of it comes from Nomura Yosuke and his incredible way of expressing action scenes. Now, I keep hearing that Nomura worked on Kill Dolly Kill, a goofy post-apocalyptic manga where teenagers have to find a way to survive killer dolls, which I recommend if you're bored and have nothing else to do, give it a read. Yet I keep hearing it's an evolution from his previous works, which is weird because Kenshiro can't draw. He works with different artists for all of his series that he'd ever published. I don't know if they develop a lifelong grudge, but he doesn't work with them again. After a series is done, they go their separate ways. But getting back on topic, while his art is incredible, especially when it comes down to character movement, the same thing cannot be said about his character design. And I know what you're gonna say. Hey, is there something wrong with the character designs? They look like typical Greek Adonis. And that's right, viewer. These are not your typical Japanese students. No, these are Greek gods, sculpted from Mount Olympus by Zeus himself. I refuse to acknowledge that these embodiments of perfection are man-made. These are just a minuscule non-issue that I have. But other than that, the character designs are fine. While I can see the appeals of pretty boys doing some cool actions, I'm not a fan of these type of character designs. I know that nice animation is an essential element to contributing to the overall quality of the show. And as the later episodes are being released, there's a slight reliance on CGI, but not to a considerable extent that it ruins the show. To me, this is a non-issue. I grew up in the dark age of anime, where you had to watch Bleach at 240p on YouTube, where subtitles took so long to come out that it was better if you skipped the middleman and just learned Japanese instead. So as long as it looks hand-drawn, that's already a win in my book. Despite saying all that, every person has their own personal expectation of what's considered good art, but the hate that Bluelock is receiving is getting out of hand. The art or the visual aesthetic of the animation is certainly a crucial part of the equation. A well-designed and beautifully rendered animation can be a joy to behold, and can help to engage and immerse the viewer in their story. However, art alone is not enough to make a great animation. Story and characters must be compelling and well developed, as well as movement and sound design needs to be skillfully executed in order to bring these elements to life. Try watching the fight between Tanjiro and the upper moon Gyutaro without knowing any of the previous knowledge. While it is still visually impressive, it becomes nothing more than a well-animated fight. Everything must be carefully planned out and executed in a way to create a sense of realism and emotional impact. The right music and sound effects can add a lot to the atmosphere and tension, and it helps bring animation to life in a way that's engaging and immersive for the viewer. While art is certainly an essential part of the animation, it's not the only factor that contributes to the overall quality of the animated work. Great animation requires a careful balance of many different elements, all working together to create this unique and engaging experience for the viewer. Not everything has to be a Ufo Tables level of animation to be considered a decent anime. Take the high-intensity football matches that are sprinkled throughout the entirety of Bluelock, making every single match feel like a desperate battle to not only stay in the game, but evolve and surpass the person that you were just a moment ago. And it's done in such a way that it makes every other sports anime protagonist look like they're stagnating. Now, I won't pretend like I understand the complex mechanic that is sprinkled throughout the sport of football, but luckily we don't have to, since Bluelock makes it easy for anyone to understand. It devolves into a typical shonen battle, where the participants have to figure out how to score a goal, while figuring out what his opponent's skills are. Or as the show likes to call them, weapons. But I'm gonna call them skills because 1, I feel like an edgelord calling them that, and 2, they're skills, not weapons of torture. Now because Bluelock keeps everything nice and simple, we can get into the heat of the match without getting distracted by every little detail. A match starts and it turns into a game of proper positioning, in order to deal with the other team's abilities. And the great thing about this, it feels like it could happen in an actual game. Now, while I have been giving it nothing but praise, there's something that I feel like I have to address, and that's sometimes its dialogue can be a bit edgy. While I don't have any issues with silly one-liners like these, since I was a bit edgy in my teenage years, while a large percentage of my middle school was listening to Kanye's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and Drake's Thank Me Later, I had to be the contrarian in the room listening to Escape the Fate. What's wrong with middle school me? Also, Dying Is Your Latest Fashion is the best album, and I won't hear any of it. I will fight everybody and their grandmothers. It's understandable if hearing a character scream, "There's a monster inside of me," or "We had to find and develop our weapons" as a deterrent. But that kind of aspect of the anime is what helps it as much as it brings it down. And I feel like the show wouldn't work as well if it doesn't portray this part as well. Edgy dialogue, or dialogue that's intentionally provocative, is often seen as a negative trait in storytelling. However, edgy dialogue can create the sense of tension and suspense in the story by pushing the boundaries of what's considered acceptable. Edgy dialogue can keep readers at the edge of their seats, and it makes the storytelling more engaging. This can be especially effective in thrillers or suspenseful dramas, where the stakes are high and the tension needs to be palpable. There's a moment after Isagi wins his first team match. After scoring a game-winning goal, he silently walks across the field to his rival crying, where the only thing that came to his mind was, "I feel incredible, so this is how it feels to destroy someone's dream." Jesus, that was a fantastic edgy line. No other sports protagonist would walk over or outright think or say they feel joy after destroying someone's hopes and dream. That's some classic Edge if you ask me. The other thing that I wish to mention is that edgy dialogue can create a realistic and complex character. People in real life often say things that are shocking and offensive, and using edgy dialogue in the story can make a character feel more authentic and relatable. This can help and create characters that have depth and complexity to them, making them feel like real people with their own motivations and desires. Take Rebecca from Cyberpunk's Edge Runner. She's a foul-mouthed lowly with a vocabulary of a Call of Duty player. Yet her presence in the show drastically improved the anime by adding those little moments of silly distraction in a very bleak show, as well as transforming her from a background character into one of David's closest companions. Could the anime be written without the characters talking about weapons and evolutions? Most definitely. There are those moments when they're speaking and I just start to cringe, and I feel like those parts could have been altered just a little bit, but then doing so would no longer be considered Bluelock. Instead, you would get Haikyuu. While edgy dialogue can be certainly misused or overused, it can also be a valuable tool in storytelling. Used wisely, edgy dialogue can create this tension and add depth to a character, and I believe this and the combination of everything that I mentioned earlier is what makes Bluelock so compelling, that even after an episode is done, I have to pick up the manga just to see how the story arc will end. There's no better example than this than the second match that Isagi participates in. After coming back from a crushing defeat, Team Z realized that they need to reorganize themselves and study the other teams in order to stay in the game, eventually realizing that their top player was Kumatu, a formidable opponent who will most likely score if given the chance. With newfound determination, they stepped into the field to put their plan into action. However, despite their best effort, Team Z's plan started to fail one after another, and Team Y was able to score. Isagi, determined to figure out who was behind the team's sabotage, was able to realize that the mastermind in the opposing team that has been calling the shots and passing the ball to Kumatu was Nico. With this information in mind, Isagi began countering every one of Nico's moves, intercepting any passes that he made to Kumato. From that moment on, it became a battle of wits between Isagi and Nico, with Isagi constantly putting pressure on him and preventing him from passing the ball to Kumato. Nearing the final moments of the match, when Nico was able to outmaneuver Isagi and was given a clear shot at the goal, Nico failed to take the shot. Instead, he chose to pass the ball to Kumato. Knowing all this, having learned from his past mistake, was able to intercept the ball, passing it to one of his teammates, leaving Nico with the same message that Baro left him. Because you didn't take the shot and chose to rely on someone else makes you unfit to be a striker. With a burning desire, with only victory in his sight, Isagi caught up to the pass that he made. As a reborn striker, he kicks the ball, scoring one of the most jaw-dropping goals I've ever seen. And it was so exciting it even made me jump out of my seat. And none of it could have happened if it wasn't for everything coming together. From the music and the sound effects to the animation, its voice acting, everything perfectly combined to create this sense of excitement I haven't seen in a while. But that's not what makes Bluelock Bluelock. Isagi walked across the field, looking at the crushed and defeated team before him. He knew that he had crushed the dreams of 11 people, and Isagi stood face to face with his dark mirror, and the only sensation that he felt was pure satisfaction in destroying another man's dream. Now going off script, but I fucking lost it here. Jesus, even I felt a little bit bad. This team is experiencing their dreams crushed right in front of them. Normally, this is where after winning, most sports protagonists would run over and lend some words of encouragement and a hand in friendship. But here in Bluelock, they just stare you down after crushing your dreams, hammering in the message. Do whatever you must in order to achieve your dreams, even if that means destroying others in the process. And this right here is what makes Bluelock Bluelock. Where we watch this boy fight to survive in a game that's played by hundreds of people, all of them starving and striving for the same spot that you're going for. And that burning desire to make it there is something that deeply resonated with me. Overcoming these insurmountable obstacles to get the chance of making it to the top is why Bluelock stands out. It lights this flame in you, this burning desire to challenge something that you had written off as unattainable, even though you kept making mistakes and deemed it a waste of time. But you get reminded why you even try to challenge these seemingly impossible challenges once more. And I believe this is what makes Bluelock, the most important anime that you haven't watched. And if you made it this far, I just want to say thank you for listening this long. And if you want me to keep making videos this long, please consider subscribing and leaving a comment. It truly helps getting my word spread. I'll be back with a video that's been on my back burner for a while. So until then, I've been God's favorite mistake, coming back with another burning desire to make a video once more. And I'll see you next time.